Bit of a late start today. Got some snow overnight. We decided to take the kids tobogganing instead of working, but we'll get a little shop time in. Time to figure out where to drill the holes to mount the engine in its new location. I measured the holes, the distance between all the holes, and plotted out those locations using AutoCAD so I could print it out to scale, which is super handy. I also did a bit of math and figured out where I want it to go on the actual sheet metal here. I want it 3 inches off one edge and quarters off the other edge. So that's what this line and that line are for. So I'm gonna get that lined up and start drilling some holes. I've got this little spring-loaded punch here that's going to help me mark out exactly where to drill the holes. Basically push down on it, and then the spring lets go and makes a nice little mark in the metal, so everything lines up perfectly. Alright, let's pull off the template and see what it looks like. I don't know about you, but every time I blink, I lose where those little marks were. So I circled them in Sharpie just so I could find them easier. For drilling these holes, I'm going to use 2 different drill bits. One is this little 16th inch bit. I've got a bunch more in case I snap this one. That's just going to be a pilot bit to get the hole started. And then I'm going to move to this guy, which is called a stepper bit. And basically as it drills down into the hole, each time it goes to the next notch, the hole gets bigger and bigger. I need to match the size hole that's there, which looks like it's about the 3rd step down. I'm also going to use a little bit of oil to help move things along smoother, keep the heat down. I don't know if this actually is necessary, but it makes me feel better. Well, that's one bit down. So it turns out because of the thickness of the metal, we're actually going to have to drill from both sides to get the hole the right size. So I'm going to flip this over and keep going. So here we are upside down. Not exactly a lot of room to work. So that's one drilling job down. The next drilling job is going to be on this guy. I want to try and figure out whether there's a spot that I can drill holes where I'm not going to be interrupting those fins. So the first thing I'm going to do is push off this little clip. Can't lose that guy. Pull off the gear. It's got these little splines, these grooves cut into both parts, so it helps keep everything in place. I'm hoping there's not going to be too much torque on here that's going to shear those off, but I guess worst case scenario we could just weld it onto the shaft. That might be a problem. You see through the hole there? That piece seems to be in the way. So I definitely won't be able to get a bolt through there. I wonder if I could put a new bolt hole further out, and then I wouldn't have to worry about the lining up with the fins either. I could just do kind of two, one on either side. Over there I could even cut them as little slots or something. I'm gonna have to think about this. The next problem I need to solve is how I'm going to attach this pulley and gear assembly to the red metal body. My plan is, remember when I said I was going to cut some of the excess shaft off? I'm going to do my best to weld that shaft straight enough so that it doesn't wobble around onto this piece. And guess what I figured out? One of the bushings, I've been calling these bearings the whole time, they're actually called bushings. Bearings have little balls or cones or rods in them that spin around. This is just a low friction. You put some grease or lubrication in there and it just spins freely. That happens to fit on the end of this shaft. So I'm going to attach to one side, and on the other side, pull this guy out of the way for a second. The bushing on the other side of this piece I'm not going to be using fits perfectly on here. The one that I will have to make is now the gear doesn't sit all the way on, so I'm going to have to either shave a bit off the back of this piece or off the bushing. I think that's more likely. I'll probably shave, I don't know, a couple millimeters off the bushing, and then I can sit in a kind of a strap that, that's the thought anyways. We'll see if that works out. This is my bench grinder. One side's got a grinding stone on it, and the other side has this little wire wheel. The bristles are brass, so they're, you know, softer than most metal, certainly softer than steel, so you can use it to abrade any rust, such as the rust on there. I normally mount these things to a bench, but I don't have a permanent home for this guy, so I just mounted it on a piece of wood and I bolted down to the bench. So we're gonna clean this guy up and see what we can see on here, and maybe I'll use the stone to grind a flat spot on there for us to weld to. Noise alert. You can see, not perfectly flat, but certainly flat enough to weld on. Maybe one of you can remind me to get the flammables out of the way before I start grinding next time. Okay, thanks. Gotta look after each other. This is a section of the axle that I don't need and that I'm going to reuse on our pulley gear combination. So let's go cut it off. We do need this section, so I double checked 2 or 3 times to make sure I'm not going to cut off the wrong side. I thought the last one was noisy, this one's more noisy. Definitely no going back now. I'm just gonna give this guy a little cleanup so that it's ready for welding. I ground a bevel on the edge of this so that when I put it flat up against a piece of metal we're going to weld it to, that little angle is going to let me get in a little deeper with the weld and have a stronger weld. It's the next day. Can't tell, we're in a windowless box, but just trust me, it's the next day. I think it's probably the 17th idea. I think this one might actually work on how to connect this guy with the little gear on it to the... What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drill some holes just outside in locations that don't interfere with these fins and don't interfere with the hub. It'll hopefully be sitting kind of in the middle there. And I'm gonna grind the washer piece off the nut so that it goes through here, sits with a flat face of the nut up against this disc, and I'm gonna weld them together. And hopefully that's the pin will sit in the hole, and hopefully we'll be connected. That wasn't so bad. Nice flat piece now. Two more. I want to find the dimension of head of the bolt so that I can make this flat edge sit right up against the metal flange, which means we're going to drill our hole half whatever we measure here. So it's exactly half an inch, which means we're going to make the center of our hole 1/4 of an inch off the edge of the flange. So to mark a perfect 1/4 inch off the edge of the flange, I'm going to take my caliper out to the 1/4 inch mark. Then I'm going to lock it down. Now these 2 points are exactly 1/4 inch apart, and I can use that to mark the spacing off the caliper. Here's the flange, and I'm just going to basically scratch a mark. It was a little hard to see before, but I've added some Sharpie onto the piece of metal, and when I scratch the line you can see maybe a little bit better that perfect 1/4 inch mark off the edge of the flange. I made myself this. It's a center finding jig. Basically it's got 2 pieces at 90 degrees, and coming down the middle at a 45 is this marking piece. And I put anything that's circular, I can then scribe down there and get a perfect 90 degrees perfectly through the center. And that's going to help us figure out where we're going to cut our holes. Let's do some drilling. Well, that was definitely a lot softer than the last material we drilled through. So I got my 1/4 inch bit set up in the drill press, and the reason I'm using the drill press is basically it's going to help me drill a straighter hole. Might if I'm using just a regular drill, might be on a bit of an angle. This will make sure that my hole is perfectly square to the workpiece. And the nice thing about having the little pilot hole already drilled is because the end of this bit is tapered, it's got a V on the bottom. When you push it down, it will naturally seat itself right in the middle of the pilot hole. The holes I drilled are a little smaller than the actual diameter of the bolt. So what I'm going to do, because this aluminum is soft and the steel in this bolt is hard, I'm basically just going to drive it down into the hole. It fits pretty well. Since there's such a tight fit between the bolt and the pulley, once I weld this on, that's it. It's not coming out again. I want to think a little bit about whether I want to weld this piece on first or whether I want to weld the shaft on and get that nice and centered first. Because once I weld it on, this piece is not coming out again. Getting this shaft lined up with this shaft perfectly is definitely important. If it's off by even a fraction of a degree, when it spins, one side's gonna be wobbling and they're not going to play nicely together. This is probably gonna spin at about 1500 RPM, so that's a lot of vibration. This is my plan for getting these two shafts lined up. It was originally one block of wood that I cut the groove in and then sliced the two pieces in half. And the idea is that one shaft is going to sit on one shaft is going to sit on the other. Once I shave a little bit of material off the bottom of this guy to bring this shaft down, it will hold both of them in perfect alignment so I can weld them together. And the amount that I have to take off the bottom of this guy is the difference in diameter between these two shafts, which works out to be about a 1/16 of an inch. I've spent about an hour messing with this and adjusting and tweaking and checking every which way I can think of. I believe it's about as good as we're gonna get. I'm gonna put a couple of tack welds on and then loosen it off and give it a spin and see how bad the wobble is. At that point I can tap it on it with a hammer to kind of adjust it one way or another to get as good as we can get it, and then weld it up. I'm told the right way is to cut this to a chisel point so you get better weld. That seems like a lot of work and I'm probably going to regret this later, but I'm just going to do a couple tacks around the outside and hope that welding around the whole thing is sufficient. I've heard a rumor, don't know if it's true, that the light from the welding will destroy the camera. If you see nothing after this and hear a lot of profanity, you'll know what happened. Well, I tried it once, didn't like the way it turned out, broke it apart. I put some pieces of paper underneath the shaft on this side to kind of adjust it, and I'm kind of hoping that this one works a little better. Let's try. Well, it's still not perfect, but I think it might be as good as we're gonna get, so I'm just gonna keep going with this. Ever read the book, The Very Hungry Caterpillar? It's what my welds look like. What's the expression? Filler and paint make me the welder I ain't. Seems fitting. I want this bushing to be about an inch from the top of the flange to where I've made that black mark. I'm just going to scribe it out with the calipers here. This is the line that I'm going to grind it down to make it fit. Apparently there's an app grinder also. Not sure what that's about. Maybe let me know in the comments, alright? Well, the pulley's cool enough to touch again. Ground down our bushing. That goes on. Put on the gear. And now, one little clip. And that side is done. Be able to hold it on two sides, one here and one here, to let this guy spin with the belt from the engine and the gear that's going to go down to the axle. I think that's about it for today. Tomorrow I'm going to start working on the wheel and axle. Thanks for watching. See you next time. After all that, turns out I've been saying it wrong. It's not a SnowRacer, it's a GT Pro Racer. We decided to take it out to the park today, do a little speed test on it. No motor, 0 kilometers an hour. For my American friends and family, that's 0 miles per hour. We'll see if we can improve on that.